Okay, so by the African narratives recently, they say these 9 countries managed to double their income since 1990 versus 2022 by GDP per capita increase, including percentage. All right, now we are going to discuss African countries that have actually done so well for the past, let's say 30 years, okay, depending on how growth they have actually grown in their GDP per capita wise. Now, are you ready to discuss Africa and see how some African countries are growing for the last 30 years? Or will your country even be part of this list? Well, don't go nowhere. Stick, and then let's discuss Africa. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, number 1 is said to be Mauritius. Mauritius is said to have 177.6% increase. That is, in 1990, they had a GDP per capita that is $8,230. But in 2022, they have a GDP per capita that is $22,840. That is huge. And they are number 1 on the list, though. That's beautiful. And number 2 is Egypt. Egypt have an increase of 103.2%. And then in 1990, they had $6,290. But in 2022, they have $12,780. That is impressive, Egypt. And number 3 is Cape Verde. Cape Verde had an increase of 305.5 increase. In 1990, they only had a GDP per capita with $1,820, but in 2022, they have $7,380. That is also beautiful. Now, number 4 is Ghana. Ghana has 138.3% increase. In 1990, Ghana had $2,300. That is the GDP per capita, but in 2022, Ghana had $5,480 per GDP per capita. And number 5, you have Ethiopia with 209.1% increase. In 1990, they have $770, but in 2022, they have $2,380 in GDP per capita. Wow. Now, at number 6, we have Rwanda. Rwanda had an increase of 154.8%. In 1990, they only had a GDP per capita of $930, but in 2022, they have $2,370. That is impressive. Now, number 7 is Uganda. Uganda had 153.3% increase. In 1990, they have only $900, but in 2022, they have $2,280. And number 8 is Burkina Faso. They have had an increase of 120.4%. In 1990, they have $980, but in 2022, they have $2,160. And lastly, our number 9 is Mozambique. Mozambique had an increase of 171.7%. In 1990, they had $460, but in 2022, they have $1,250. Now, they are also saying that, note this, inflation and cost of living index has been taken into consideration. Source is World Bank or our World in Data. Okay, now, for you to understand, it says inflation and cost of living has also been taken into consideration for us to get these figures. And if you want the source to this information, you can actually get it from the World Bank or our World in Data. Hopefully you have understood. So these have been the increasement from various countries, that the top 9 countries that have actually grown in their GDP per capita. That is, it started from Mauritius being number 1 to Egypt, Cape Verde, Ghana, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, Burkina Faso, and then Mozambique. Was your country mentioned here? Why was your country not here? Well, this is how far some countries have grown for the past, let's say, 30 years or say 3 decades. Okay, now you can share your point of view at the comment section and let's see what you have for us. Now, let's see this as this was shared. Well, some other Africans say higher income doesn't always translate to happiness. I'm sorry to say. Well, that's so true though. All these figures we are quoting here, most of the people or citizens in those various countries are actually crying now. I'm from Ghana. We are number 4 on this one. It says we have a GDP capital of around $5,480. Bro, I don't see nothing and I'm so broke right now. But yeah, we are actually no Ghanaian is happy on the streets, unless maybe you are friends with the politicians or you're a politician yourself, or you're actually enjoying some national cake. That you will be happy. But apart from that, the rest of us are not happy in the country. So basically, man, it's true. We are not actually seeing the impact of these figures in our pockets. I'm being honest with you guys. Now, this one says Now, that is a glow up chart. Prove that consistency growth compounds like crazy over decades. Well, yeah, they have actually done great to be actually featured like this and show most improvement, but it should not always be on paper. We need it on our physical market. We need it on the streets. We need all these figures happening on the street. That's what we need, bro. All right, so this one also says, in general, Africa has such a bright future that anyone that wants to get wealthy and successful while also making a positive impact on the world should consider doing business there. Create jobs for the people, solve problems, and access will come their way, or success will come their way. Okay, well, yeah, based on these things, you can actually say Africa is a promising country or countries or continents that will actually help you if you are to invest in them. But it's so hard to invest in Africa though, because there's a lot of things that are actually at stake here. But trust me, you will actually get your profits back if you actually invest it and do the right way. Trust me, Africa is really home for prosperity, as it says. Well, again, this one says, from resilience to growth, these nations prove progress is journey worth celebrating. Well, yeah, they have actually done great though. This has been impressive for the past decades. Shout out to all those countries listed there. Now, again, this one says impressive growth, especially Cape Verde and Ethiopia, shows how much can change in a few decades. Well, I think man knows these two countries for sure, and he believes that these countries were actually struggling, and now, for some few decades now, they are at the top and are moving fast and growing their various countries. Big shout outs to Ethiopia, big shout outs to Cape Verde, big shout outs to other countries that were listed here. And actually, we are here and we are discussing Africa's growth for the past from 2020 to 2022. We have actually noticed this about for 3 decades now and how they have been growing in the GDP per capita. Notice this, it was actually taken into consideration with all cost of living and also inflation. And the source to this information was shared by the African narratives, but you can also find it at the World Bank or One World. Yeah, you can find this there and then you can know more about these whole issues. The name is Vidashi. Thank you for your time.